Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast. And we have a special guest with us here on the State of the Saints podcast. He's back once again. I'm talking about NFL and college football analyst, and also you can catch him on WWL along with Bobby Abel, the Cajun Cannon, Mr. Mike Detillier. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to have you here on the State of the Saints podcast. And I wanted to just talk to you. We talked a little bit behind the scenes. I want to just get a bit about the documentary we talked about, the 100 years of WWL. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that documentary is all about?
Yeah, next week it'll be 100 years. WWL radio will be on the air. That's a long time.
Yeah.
And they've been through a lot of different things. So, for me, my memories, and I was telling you that first time I ever remember listening to WWL, I was a little kid, and I grew up on the Bayou, and I still have a home here on the Bayou.
Yeah.
And my mom, she would listen to this. My brother and I couldn't stand it. It's this, man, it was this old Cajun music. I guess you would call it swamp pop today. And we hated it. And we wanted to listen to the rock and roll stuff. And but at 11 o'clock, she would put it on WWL, and it always had jazz music. And they'd have the 12 o'clock news for about 15 minutes, and then they'd come back and finish it up with jazz music. First memories of WWL was that. But then the sports stuff got involved, and I was telling you the story. My dad, he bought 2 season tickets year one, 1967. So, okay, I'm 7 years old. My brother's 12. So, he got dibs, and I didn't realize it until later, like my brother was sort of playing me.
Right.
Because he was going to the games because he wanted to see certain teams. So he actually got to see Gilliam's run.
Right.
He actually, and our seats were in sort of at an angle to the end zone. And it was a really good shot as Gilliam is running downfield and he scores.
Mm-hmm.
So, he picked that game. He wanted to go see the Baltimore Colts and Giannis. So he got to see that. He got to see the Cowboys. I got to see Cleveland, Washington. But the one mess up he had, I tell you, he thought the Saints' first win would happen against Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And actually, they lost that game. I went the next week and they beat Philly. So, yeah. So it was one of those deals. And, you sort of remember, but I remember my mom having the radio on.
Right.
And us listening to the first game. And just to hear at that time, Al Wester, who was the voice of Notre Dame.
Right.
And he would fly in every Sunday to do the games. And Maury McGill, who was a longtime employee of WWL radio, he was, he was involved with the broadcast. So, and we listening to the pregame, and it was almost like an infomercial. They had the mayor of New Orleans on. Al Hurt would come on and talk about his club. But Al was a minority owner of the team at that time. He had a little piece of the action.
Right.
And they had the introduction. You could hear in the background this really loud noise. And I vividly remember Al Wester saying, for everybody listening, Jimmy Taylor was just introduced to the crowd. He got a 2-minute standing ovation.
Wow.
Jimmy, think about this. Jimmy grew up in Louisiana in Baton Rouge.
Right.
Played high school football there, goes to LSU. Right. Man, Jimmy Taylor, Jim Brown, Unitas, Bart Starr, probably the 4 biggest names of the 1960s in the NFL.
Yeah.
And Jimmy's finishing it out here with the Saints. And I got to talk to Jimmy later. He said, Mike, I didn't have nothing left. I took my money. I grabbed the money. It was great. But Jimmy wasn't Jimmy anymore. And just to hear that crowd for Jimmy Taylor, and then you heard him talk about, and that's the opening kickoff for the New Orleans Saints. Bruce Gossett and John Gilliam gets the ball at the 6-yard line.
Right.
And that's about all you heard. And then you just heard the noise.
I grew up in New Orleans, Mike. I mean, I'm out here in Myrtle Beach right now, but I grew up in New Orleans, and WWL is the main reason why I'm a radio broadcaster today. I grew up in the 90s, of course, when the Saints weren't very good and the games were blacked out. So I used to
blame that on A-Bear. I tell him all the time. That's you messed that up.
But I love Bobby A-Bear. But I mean, Jim Henderson and the late Hoagie Godjohn were like two guys that introduced me to the world of broadcasting. You know, listening to those guys, and also the Iron Man Frank Davis is also another guy that I grew up listening to and also watching on television, and of course the morning news with Eric Paulson and Sally Ann Roberts. So I mean, WWL has always been very, very important to me, and it's been an integral part of my life. You know, I mean, it is the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing today. So, I mean, so many great stories, about WWL. Like, we could go on and on all day about, what WWL means, not only to us, but the city of New Orleans as a whole. But let's go ahead and move forward a little bit, talk about the New Orleans Saints. As you know, the New Orleans Saints, they re-signed Jameis Winston to a 2-year deal, 2 years, $28 million with $21 million guaranteed. Mike, it took a while for the New Orleans Saints to come to this conclusion. They spent a lot of last week trying to court Deshaun Watson, who ended up going to Cleveland. What are your thoughts on Jameis Winston returning back to the Saints? And what does it say that the New Orleans Saints went out here and courted Deshaun Watson instead of re-signing Jameis after, an okay start to the Saints' starting career?
Well, I grew up in the business world more than the entertainment world that I'm in today. And so you got to explore every option. What's your best option at that point? Yeah. And Deshaun's the type of guy, in my opinion, he not only makes you a playoff team, you get you a shot to play in the Super Bowl.
Right.
You don't know that about Jameis.
Right.
At this stage. And so I understand, and you got to take it as a business if you're Jameis. Okay. Yeah. They offered a contract in January. I'm sure they tried to lowball him, but hey, listen, you fighting for it. You're not the guy, you're fighting for it.
Right.
And so I think the Saints paid more for Jameis over the weekend, but Jameis didn't get what he wanted.
Right.
So that was a compromise with that. There's nothing wrong with looking around. I think the Saints also took a glance at Jimmy Garoppolo. And the reason I say that is we got to interview Dennis Allen after his press conference on WWL, Bobby and Christian.
Yeah, good stuff, by the way. Good stuff, by the way. I'll check that out.
And so my first question to him was, what are you looking for in a quarterback? He said, a winner. And he said, let me clarify, a proven winner. And right then and there, it popped in my head. I wasn't even thinking about Deshaun Watson. My first thought is he's talking about Jimmy Garoppolo.
Right.
You can argue all you want about how good he is. He's won. He has won.
Yeah.
He's won a lot of games, and he's taken the team to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
And so that stuck in my mind. And so I think his shoulder injury and surgery took that off the table.
Right.
Because you're not going to have him until a month before. People say, well, you did it with Drew Brees. Well, it was different circumstances.
Yep.
Different, totally different. And you didn't have to give up anything for Drew. I think the 49ers were looking for a second-round pick and a player.
Yeah.
I ain't giving that up for a guy coming off a shoulder injury. I'm not doing it. So I think they did look around. And then after exploring that and being told, Watson's going to Cleveland, it was the Jerry Maguire moment. Show me the money.
Right.
And listen, I don't blame him. I never hate on anybody making money.
Me neither.
People ask me all the time about, high school players or college players in this, name, image, likeness. Well, why should I hate on that?
Right.
If somebody wants to pay you that, why should I be negative on that? Now, you can be jealous all your life and say that shouldn't happen, but because it ain't happening to you, you should at least be happy for another family because it certainly helps them.
Right.
I got no problems with that. None.
Yeah.
Some people's like, man, Mike, you don't talk like somebody your age. I was like, no, because I don't act like somebody my age either.
Yeah.
And I got wife, kids, and grandkids that would attest to that. And I got a little granddaughter running around here that
right.
I got to make sure that she don't run into the picture here too.
Yeah.
But oh yeah, because she's sort of like Pop. She's a little bit of a ham.
Yeah.
And so I think it was the best option at that time to go with Jameis. My thing about it is if you're going to rerun this with no getting him help at wide receiver and tight end, expect the same results.
Yeah.
You got to get him help at wide receiver and tight end.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
he had nothing to do with the injury to Michael Thomas, the slow rehab, not being able to come back. Yep. So first things first, you got to get Mike healthy because he gives you a star wideout.
Yep.
He gives you a guy that can move the chains and make everything sort of work.
Yep.
And coverages rotate to his side of the field.
Yep.
But you got to get two more receivers. You got to get two more. Yep. And you got to find a tight end that can actually catch it.
Yep.
Because when you look at it last year, I think, and I always kid A-Bear about this because he's like, Mike, you know all this fantasy football stuff. He said, man, I just gave somebody an endorsement for Adam Troutman. I said, what, to lose? In practice? He was dropping passes in practice. I said, come on, Bobby, he ain't catching them there. He ain't catching them in a game.
Yeah.
And Adam was a major disappointment to me because I thought going into this, he would have a huge role in this offense. I really thought this was going to be his shot to do it, and it didn't come through. Now, here's the crazy part. Watching him in college, he was a great receiver, so-so blocker.
Right.
Last year, he was a good blocker and a so-so receiver. So I'm like, okay, who switched on him?
Switched it up, yeah.
And okay, Callaway, he's a nice 3 option.
Yep.
I like Deontay. My issue with Deontay is he's awfully small and he gets hurt a lot. Okay, and you can't use him on these wide receiver screens. Okay, he's 5'6". He's 168 pounds soaking wet.
Yep.
No, people are gonna pop him. This is the NFL. You're not playing out in your yard. This ain't high school football. You're not Al Bundy. Okay? You're gonna get hit. And I would like to see them use him more vertically because I think that's a strength of Jameis.
Yep.
So you listen, bringing back Jameis, you gotta promise him we're gonna upgrade our tight end and wide receiver position because for at least 8 games. Now, we don't know it for sure, but I would suspect Alvin's not going to be here. He's going to get an 8-game suspension.
Yep.
So now you've taken away the biggest offensive threat for probably half the year. Come on, you can't expect to throw Jameis out there. And now with no Terron Armstead at left tackle, we saw what kind of mess that was.
Yep.
So he was the best option at that point. And it's really a 1-year prove it deal, okay? Because I can eat the $21 million in that 1 year. The second year, I'm going to make a decision one way or another next offseason on if I want to keep you and extend that deal.
Right.
So it's really a 1-year prove it deal for Jameis. And he had his moments last year. He cut down on the interceptions. I think he looked jittery in the pocket at times. But a lot of that was ain't nobody getting open.
Yep.
Okay. People, oh man, look at Jameis, hold on to the ball too long. Well, who he's gonna throw it to? There's nobody open downfield.
Real.
Watch the game film. You watch it the next day, and I think Sean sort of covered up for receivers too. Was like, it's not all the receivers' fault. What? You watch that? Where he's gonna put that ball at? So it's a 1-year prove it deal. This defense is really good. The special teams, if Will Lutz is healthy, is very good.
Right.
Jameis can get you into the playoffs if you get him help.
Yeah.
You got to get him help because you got to remember, you're not sort of rerunning 2021 again because Alvin's not going to be there for half the year.
Right.
And so you better get him some help or anybody else. Come on. You can't expect that even if you'd have got Watson, without getting more help, that he would have been able to do that either.
Right.
So it's about the surrounding people. We'll see how good Aaron Rodgers is without Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
We'll see how good that works out. Why is Tom Brady now becoming the general manager of the Buccaneers? And he's begging these guys to come back to the Bucs. I knew he would be a fallback guy,
right.
But I got no problem with them exploring other options.
Right.
With it, and the line wasn't that long behind Winston to go after him.
Yeah.
That was no other team there. Now, again, his agent can tell somebody, oh, he was ready to go to Indianapolis Monday. What? Well, didn't they cut that deal for Matt Ryan Monday? So something don't smell right here.
Right.
Now, they might sell that to other people, but they ain't selling it to me because I don't believe it. I don't buy that at all. That you cut a deal Monday morning all of a sudden with Matt Ryan? Nah. That deal was cut over the weekend. And so I think the Saints looked at it a lot of different ways and said, hey, listen, we know what we have with Jameis.
Right.
And let's do this favorable to you. We give you a nice deal, 21 guaranteed. And we're going to try to help you with getting other people.
Right.
Either via the draft, trade, or free agency.
Yeah. Look, I really think, and I really truly agree with you when you say they need to get better receivers.
Oh,
I mean, they were terrible, Mike. Terrible. Absolutely terrible last year. And like you said, I mean, Sean Payton can say whatever he wants. When you can't get off the line of scrimmage, when you can't beat man coverage, when you can't catch the 50-50 ball, and you have to keep your fingers crossed and hope that when the ball hit their hands, they catch it. I mean, you need a whole different group. And I like Callaway. I really do. I think he has a lot of promise. But I really think the Saints need to stop dealing with these projects. Like you look at the Dallas Cowboys, they had Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb. Each one of those guys could be a number one receiver on some other team. Michael Gallup just got paid. CeeDee Lamb made Amari Cooper expendable, send him to Cleveland. The Saints need that same type of mentality to me. Drafting a guy, maybe like a guy like Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson, somebody like that, Jameson Williams, or go alongside somebody maybe they can pick up in free agency. That you can have a three wide receiver group that's capable of making plays. Let me ask you this. Okay, so we talked about Alvin Kamara, the suspension. You say maybe like 6 to 8 games. What do you think about the Saints maybe doing something via trade, maybe like somebody like a Saquon Barkley, right? Saquon Barkley, he's been injured. We seen Robert Woods go to the Titans for like a 6th-round pick, right? And you have Saquon who has that history. Do you think the Saints can maybe acquire somebody like Saquon? New York did say that they were open to many options that involves even trading some of their best players. So what do you think about maybe bringing somebody in with a similar skill set to Alvin Kamara over those 6 to 8 weeks?
Yeah, I like that idea. I thought one player they may have a lot of interest in was Marlon Mack.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because Marlon was the guy in Indianapolis, and Jonathan Taylor came in and, we got to move on. And I get it. Listen, that's just the football business part of things. So I do think that either through a trade or draft, because the one thing, and I tell a lot of times I'll get running backs call me and say, where do you think I'll go? And I tell them, listen, if you expect to go in round 1 or 2, that territory is rare today.
That's true.
Now, a couple years ago with ATN went in round 1.
Right.
I thought he made a mistake not coming out the year before.
Yeah.
And so you had 2 running backs going round 1, but this year you won't have 1 running back going round 1. I think the problem.
Hey, Mike, real quick, while we're talking about ETN, do you think he went back to Clemson because, there were stories about his pass protection? So he went back again to try to work on his pass protection because they said he was a really good runner in between the tackles, catch the ball out of backfield. Do you think that was the reason why he decided to come back, go back to Clemson for that extra season?
I think it had more to do with his receiving skills.
Right.
He can catch the ball real well.
Okay.
Coming out, because I was at a couple camps. He was a high school kid, and he didn't catch the ball well at all. He really has worked at it and has become a really good receiver.
Yeah.
It is something you can get better at, catching the ball, learning how to catch it.
Right.
And a lot of it is rep work. And I think he wanted to show everybody, hey, listen, I can catch the ball well. Also, too, they may have had name, image, likeness back then for him to return before name, image, likeness came into vogue.
Right.
But, whatever. I just think for a running back, your career is going to be short in the NFL.
Right.
He knew he probably would be a first-round pick.
Right.
That was the biggest surprise. Deuce and I talked about it all the time because Deuce and I were like, I don't quite get it.
Right.
Why he would want to return for another year. But for whatever reason or reasons, and I think from a football standpoint, it had to do with receiving. But, he might have, got that name, image, likeness situation straightened out a year ahead of time.
Yeah.
But it was strange to me. Now, this year, you won't have one in round one. You probably will have two in the second round.
Yeah.
With Brees and Michigan State's running back. Now that he's going to miss some time,
right?
I want a running back that can do the same things Alvin can do. Now, he's not going to do them as well.
Yeah.
But I don't really have to change up my offense much.
Right.
Okay. And so, Mark's going to be there. Isaiah Spiller is a guy from Texas A&M who I really liked coming into the 2021 season. He didn't look quite as quick. He wasn't the tackle breaker I saw in 2020.
Right.
I don't know what happened. And some of that certainly had to do with their offensive line play wasn't nearly as good.
Right.
But, he's a guy I really like. I think he's a guy, say, in the third round, I would love to get my hands on because he brings some similar skill set to the table. So do you go for the veteran? And that's what I would do. I would try to get a veteran that's been there, done that, can carry the load for me, for a stretch, but also be a pretty good receiver coming out the backfield. Yeah. And then we figure it out. Listen, all smart people here, they figure it out, once Alvin comes back. And I think there's always use of three backs in the NFL.
I agree.
Because you're going to get – those guys get nicked up a lot. Les Miles used to always tell me, I need four. And I'm like, Coach, why four? And he was like, the wear and tear on a back sort of gets them. And so you're going to have two of them that are hurt at the same time every week. Yeah. So I want two fresh guys. I want two guys that are fairly healthy at that point. Now, that's college football, but – and four is stretching it in the NFL, but you can have three because you're going to have one of those three that are nursing some injury.
Right.
Again, my original thought was, man, Marlon Mack would be a great pickup for this team.
Yeah. Yeah. I like Marlon Mack too. I think that he's one of those guys that was very underrated as a running back. Like it seemed like every week in Indianapolis, you seen him making a play. He was pretty dynamic out there. Then, like you said, Jonathan Taylor comes through, and the rest is history. But I just look at a back like a Saquon. A guy that has a history of being injured.
His finances and what you got to pay him, I think, will come into play for any team that trades for him. Right. I like Saquon a lot. Right. And I think he would be a really good fit. The finance part now comes into play here. Right. And, Saquon wants to go somewhere where he's the guy. And I understand that perfectly. But you got to prove that you can stay healthy enough to be the guy. Exactly. And I think in this offense, he would get a lot of touches and a lot of catches, even in the two spot. Yep. But for half the year, you got a chance to be the guy. Yep. Yeah, that's my whole point. And then even if, I'm pretty sure like they picked up his 5th year option, so he's going to be up for a contract.
I mean, you look at a guy like Leonard Fournette, who to me has been a little bit more productive than he has. And he got like a 3-year, $21 million contract just for the Bucs, so $7 million a year. So let's just say, for example, if Saquon pans out in the absence of Alvin Kamara, and you have Mark Ingram, who's going into his second year of his contract. I mean, if Saquon plays well, maybe you can actually work something out to keep he and Alvin on the team. I mean, but that's just kind of a little fantasy thing right there.
Yeah, and I get that. And the other thing, too, is there's nothing wrong with rent a player for a year.
Yep.
Okay, everybody does it.
Yep.
You know, you want to try to keep those guys, but that's nothing wrong with that rent a player for a year. Yep. He understands it's a business, and you understand it's a business.
Yep.
And so without Alvin, and the Saints have said very little. And I understand it, because the more you say, the more other teams will say, "Oh, you need him that bad?
Yep.
I want a certain price for him."
Yep.
So I keep my mouth shut.
Yep. That's a good point. I mean, definitely, but I just think that's something that they need to explore. Somebody like Saquon that has that similar skill set of Alvin. I feel like if you get him, I mean, Alvin is his own entity, but I think that Saquon can do some of those things that Alvin can do, and you'll miss Alvin, but not as much having a guy like that. I mean, pending he stays healthy. But let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about Terron Armstead. He just signed a 5-year deal with the Miami Dolphins. The Who Dat Nation definitely reached out and said, man, how much they're going to miss him and everything he brought to the team. Drew Brees retiring, he became like the leader of the team. I mean, Sean Payton talked about his leadership in his farewell press conference. But now the Saints looking for a left tackle. My first question before we talk about the left tackle, there was reports that were going around saying that Terron Armstead was waiting to see if the Saints were going to acquire Deshaun Watson. If they did, then he most likely would have signed back with him. But instead, they couldn't get him. He goes to Miami. Do you think that's a knock on Jameis Winston as a quarterback, the reason Terron Armstead did not come back? Or do you feel like it was more of a business decision? He's on the other side of 30. Most likely it's probably be his last big payday. What are your thoughts on Terron Armstead's decision to move on from the Big Easy?
Okay, I think it had a lot to do with money. Okay, if they're going to guarantee me $43 million, guarantee me that.
Right.
Because people believe you're going to get all that money when you sign a contract.
Right.
You don't read the fine print real good. Because if they cut you loose, the only money they owe you is the guaranteed money.
Right.
They don't owe you that other stuff.
Yep.
So I think he was waiting to see what would happen with Deshaun.
Right.
And but that's not a knock on Jameis. I think he knew what the Dolphins had guaranteed him.
Right.
I think for the Dolphins, they wanted him in. And we had on Armando Seguero, who covers the Dolphins, and his deal was, I think this deal has been long done, but they want to make sure he's healthy.
Right.
Because the Dolphins have had a history of drafting and signing free agents and drafting players with injury issues.
Yeah.
And I think Stephen Ross was, wait a minute, before I'm going to cut that check, our doctors are going to take a good look at him.
Right.
Really good look at him to
right.
make sure everything's there. So it's a business decision. You can't blame him.
Right.
Man, again, $43 million guaranteed. I thought he'd get a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it was 5 years, 87
right.
With incentives. I thought, he might touch into the 90s, mid 90s with it.
Yeah.
But whatever's the deal, you're going to miss him because when he was healthy, he was an elite player. But he missed time every year.
That's true.
So that was the yin and the yang of it. At 31 years old, he's a great leader in the locker room. He was a guy that always had time for you. He came on Sports Talk with us numerous times.
Right.
And he understood the business very, very well and knows this is going to be the last payday. Big one for him. Yep. He might sign another contract, but it's not going to be like what he's getting now.
That's true.
And so, listen, I don't blame him, for waiting to see. And if Deshaun had sign with the Saints? Yes, I think he's back.
Yeah.
But that's not a knock on Jameis. I think if you say, well, that's a knock on Jameis, my thing is he's going to play with Tua Tagovailoa.
Good point.
Okay. And eventually it might be Teddy Bridgewater because Lamondo's deal is, Mike, I know you like to gamble a little bit. I'm willing to say by game 6, Teddy Bridgewater's the starter here in Miami. And remember, the Dolphins offered Teddy a lot more money to go to Miami, but Sean Payton convinced them to play one more year with the Saints.
Yep.
And so it's an interesting team that has seemingly all the pieces of the puzzle together, but the one big one at quarterback. How good is Tua? And it's a split decision. When you do radio out in Miami, they got probably 40% of the people that think that Tua is a great quarterback.
Yeah.
Now, you can't compare him to Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow or any of those guys. You can't do it. And he's small and he's injury prone. Okay. That's not a knock. That's the truth.
Yeah.
With him.
Good point.
So now you bring in an elite left tackle. Now you might say, oh, he's left-handed, so he don't have his blind side. All I know is if you watch the NFL today, they swing those ends all around. One time he's on the left, next time he's on the right. No, if you got a player that's a left tackle that's not real good, man, I'm putting my best pass rusher on him. So that's why, and I think this will all be sorted out. And depending on what else the Saints get, my first thought would be to move Ramchak to left tackle.
Okay.
And have James Hurst play on the right side. Because in my opinion, James is a better right side player. Either right guard, right tackle than he is on the left.
Right.
We didn't see much of anything from Landon Young. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask you about. I was just about to ask you about Landon Young. What about Landon Young?
Well, put it to you this way: if I see him starting that right tackle, I'm testing him every play with my best pass rusher. Come on. That's not a knock on Landon, but I want to see how good he is.
Yeah.
So, I'm not an American Red Cross. I'm not here to, for charity work. I'm here to beat you. And I'm going after a guy that I don't know. I don't know how well he can play at the NFL level. And neither does anybody else.
That's true.
So depending on what happens, now you might pick up a veteran that you can rent for a year and put him on the left side.
Yeah.
You talk about drafting a left tackle, and that may well be part of it.
Right.
Do you want a rookie there? Okay, Penei Sewell comes in from Oregon, and I thought he was a really good prospect. I liked him. He struggled last year.
Yeah.
He struggled in pass protection. Really good run blocker. Struggled protecting.
Right.
Rashawn Slater was the opposite. I watched him with the Chargers. Man, he was a really good pass protector, and he was an above-average run blocker. But, man, Slater, man, he impressed me last year and what he did to protect Justin Herbert. So, drafting one in the first 2 rounds, I think will happen.
Okay.
Even if you pick up a veteran, okay, because that guy is going to be a rent player.
Right.
Okay, so now I don't have to play him right away. If he's good enough, yes, I can play him.
Right.
But in this draft class, I really think you'll probably see 11 and maybe 12 tackles picked in the first 2 rounds.
Okay.
That's a lot. It's a meat and potatoes draft. But when the Saints going to come pick in round 1, okay, Evan Neal's off the board from Alabama.
Yep.
Okay, Icky's off the board from North Carolina State.
Yep.
Charlie Cross from Mississippi State's off the board. Trevor Penning is off the board. So the top 4 tackles gone. Okay, if you think otherwise, give me a call. I got my preferred property behind my home here on the bayou to sell you. The Greeks settled this years ago. If you get a chance to pick a really talented big man or a really talented small guy, you pick the big man.
Right.
Okay, and it's a meat and potatoes draft. Now, I work with Bobby worked with him a long time. I did TV with John 4K for 9 years, and they write about this: quarterback trumps everything. And they write about that.
That's true.
Write about it. But in this draft class, you don't have that one guy that everybody's sort of falling over one another to get. Yeah, Malik Willis is very talented, but you know there's going to be some transition with him. Yeah. Kenny Pickett is more NFL ready than any of the guys.
Yeah.
Are you going to use a top 10 or 12 pick on Kenny Pickett?
Right.
Corral, I thought, did a really nice job at Ole Miss. He's sort of smallish, but man, he's a tough dude. He's a tough little guy to throw the football. And Desmond Ridder has a lot of skills. He's just not accurate throwing the football from the pocket. And I see the same thing with Malik. Well, he's impressive in all these drills.
Yep.
My thing is, don't get suckered into the drills.
Yep.
Watch the game film on him.
Yeah.
And my old buddy Joe Clark, he passed away last summer. And we watched Malik last in 2020 when he was at Liberty. And Joe always has a nickname for a quarterback that he's a one look, take off running. He said, Mike, he's a bolter. He's just like if you raise horses. I grew up, man, they had a lot of horses around me. Right. There's always this really beautiful horse. And if you get close to him, he might let you get close, but then all of a sudden he takes off running. He's a bolter. And what I see with Malik, he's got to show a little bit more patience in the pocket.
Right.
Physically, he's got all the skills you're looking for. He's got a strong arm. He's built like a linebacker. He can run with the ball well. He can improvise. He's gotten better with the touch throws. It's his read and recognitions that he's got to get better at. Right. And you don't get that by watching. You get that by playing.
Yep.
So he may get a redshirt year on whoever selects him. And I think he most likely will end up being a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
Because if you look at Carolina and Atlanta, they need quarterback help. They need quarterback help.
It's true.
So, man, he's a great leader too. He came to Manning camp, and I can tell right off the bat how smart he is. He's a really good leader. And the first thing he told me, I said, "What's your biggest weakness?" And he looked at me and said, "You knew it before you asked." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I got to be more patient in the pocket." No, he knew it. He knew it, but he admitted it. I got to be a little bit more patient in the pocket, and so. But he'll wow you in all these drills. He's really good. So I would not rule out the Saints picking a quarterback in round 1 if the right guy was there. Now, I do not think Malik Willis will be there when the Saints pick. I think he's gone. Kenny Pickett, I sort of have a feeling he won't be there either.
Yeah.
But if he was, I got to seriously consider that.
Yeah. So you think even though, they signed Jameis Winston to the 2-year deal, they still will go quarterback in the first round?
If they were convinced he was the guy that in 2023 would be the guy.
Yeah. Okay,
you can't convince me Ian Book's the guy. I know Sean liked him. Okay. But Sean ain't here no more.
True.
Okay. Okay. True. That was a Sean Payton pick. And I knew it. First time he opened his mouth about Ian Book, I wrote it in my book. I said it numerous times on the radio. Everybody, no, you got him way too high. There's no way, no team. I said, no. This ain't the electoral college. It only takes one team. And I knew how Sean liked him.
Yep.
Sure enough, bang.
Yeah.
What he said on Dan Patrick.
Yep. He reminded me.
Well, I didn't even think about that. Come on. We all know he had long thought of that. He had long thought of it. But Sean's not here.
Right.
So if you convinced Kenny Pickett is the guy and he's there,
right,
then what Bobby and 4K have told me is true. Yeah. I mean, listen, I've done this for over 30 years. It's not that they were the first to tell me, but it is accurate that quarterbacking position. trumps every other one, even the big man theory.
Yeah.
Because we see how teams fall over one another for a really talented young quarterback.
That's true. I mean, we seen like Lionel Collins go to the Cincinnati Bengals, and he put that tweet out there, said that the Joe Burrow's bodyguard is here. They take a lot of pride in doing a good job, especially for these young players. I mean, you got people like Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry talking about going back to the Browns because of Deshaun Watson. Guys want to play for guys they know for a fact they can win with. I mean? It's nothing personal, but if you have a better opportunity to win a championship by going to another team where you have a quarterback like a Herbert, like a Mahomes, guys that give you the best chance to win. They're young and they give you many more years of production. I mean, of course, you're going to take that opportunity. So, I mean, I don't blame any of those guys for wanting that. And I do agree with you. If the right quarterback is there, the Saints have to go for it. But I do think that there's so many young wide receivers out there that are so talented that it would be hard for them to pass up. I think the tackle position, like you said, all the top tackles are going to be off the board. That's why.
So I'm not reaching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not reaching for that tackle. But if those four guys go and Willis is gone, you're going to have a host of defensive linemen, no matter if you think they're ends or tackles or edge rushers. Those guys are going to be gone.
Right.
It's a different opinion on the receivers. And Randy Mueller and I'd got him on Sports Talk. Okay. But before we were talking, and he was like, "Oh, who you like at the receiving corps?" My top four he liked, but in reverse order. Okay. Because he likes Chris Olave better than all of them.
Me too.
He's got Chris number one.
Me too.
I have his teammate Garrett as the top receiver.
Okay.
Or Drake London from USC.
Right.
And he's got Drake in like the 4th spot. and so, but bottom line is this. I think the X factor is going to be Jameson from Alabama.
Right.
Because if he had not tore the ACL, he would have been a top 12 pick. He'd have been the first receiver off the board.
Yeah.
Not only is he a really good speed, get up the field receiver, he's also a tremendous return man. Okay, so he adds that, similar to what Waddle added to Alabama and with the Dolphins.
Right. Yeah.
He's going to be the X factor on, does a team say, man, late teens, I would have never got him here.
Yep.
Do I pick him and know that I may start the season without him? I mean, I just might.
Right.
But, man, look what he brings to the table. ACL injury is not what it was 5 years ago, much less what it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And the one thing about young players, man, they heal fast.
Yep.
God, he gives you that healing power as a young player much better than you do when you're 29, 30, or 32 years old.
Yeah.
So he's the X factor here. But, you look at the two Ohio State receivers, what you're talking about with Garrett and Chris Olave, with Drake London, with Jameson. Treylon Burks is certainly in the mix too.
Yeah.
But everybody's got a mixed opinion on where they are. And so, Randy and I, we going through it. He was like, wait a minute. We're talking about the same guys, right? We just got it in reverse order. And so when he came on, I said, well, I'm going to ask you on the show. And he was like, Mike, I got a good line for you. And he's like, so we start talking about receivers. And he said, Mike, that's why Baskin Robbins has more than 60 flavors. Everybody's got a different opinion on those wideouts, where they're going to be. And is there a player that somebody wants, and you could fall back a few picks, get you an extra pick, let's say in the 3rd round, and you end up picking sort of the same guy at 23, and you end up with an extra pick. The Saints have not really done that. They've been a team, because of Sean, that wants to aggressively move up.
Right.
It happened in this draft class. They were trying to get up real early in the draft because Sean really liked Jalen Waddle. Really did. And he also liked Mac Jones. So they made that pitch, to try to get up to get Waddle. Didn't work. Mac Jones is still on the board. They're on the phone because they've done deals with the Patriots in the past to try to move up to get Mac. And that didn't work out. It was too expensive.
Right.
And so they decided not to do it.
Right.
Is it going to be maybe a little bit of a reversal now? Because now you're not picking in the 20s.
Yeah.
You're picking in the teens.
Right.
And there may be one team that says, man, I really like that defensive lineman. I didn't think he'd be there. Let me get him because at 24, he's not going to last to us.
Yep.
Let me make that deal. And so it's going to be interesting because I think all of us knew that Coach Payton, especially in the early rounds, had a lot of say on who was getting picked. Yeah, come on.
Right.
That's not a secret.
Right.
That's fact.
Right.
He had a lot to say. Now, he would always tell us as the middle and the later rounds come, I got to fall back to the scouts because they've seen him.
Yeah.
They've seen him. They've walked on that grass. They've been around those type players. But the early rounds, he knew like that top 100 really good.
Yeah.
He knew him. And he had his own opinion of it.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of coaches like Sean in the NFL. Okay, they fall in love with a player.
Yeah,
and it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. Had it not been for Sean, the Saints aren't trading up into round 3 to get Alvin Kamara.
That's true.
He went work out Dobbs. Okay, that didn't work out well, but man, he fell in love with Alvin real quick. And then Alvin falls into round 3, and he's pressing the buttons. Listen, we got to do it. We got to go get Kamara. And he makes the trade for that particular deal. So, and he also pressed for Brandon Cooks. When Brandon was still around in that pick, hey, let's move up with Arizona to get him. I can't tell you what Dennis Allen's going to be like because he's never been there in that position. And who has the reins? Okay, somebody got to have the chalk in their hands.
Right.
Okay? It's either going to be Mickey or it's going to be Dennis early on.
Yeah.
Who makes that last push? Who makes that last push?
Yeah. That's a good point. I tell people all the time, Sean Payton ran the Saints the way that he felt was best. And Dennis is going to try to do the same thing. They're not the same person. Like their mind frames aren't the same. And I think some Saints fans feel because Dennis Allen was a part of a Sean Payton coaching tree that they feel like, he's going to be just like him. I think they're polar opposites.
They're going to be opposite in some areas.
Yeah.
Listen, no individual thinks the Saints.
Yeah.
In that organization, no individual thinks exactly alike.
Nope.
I've been around enough draft rooms where I've had GMs, scouts, and coaches tell me I had an opinion, the GM had an opinion, the regional scout had an opinion, the director of player personnel had a different opinion. We got 4 different opinions on the same cat, same guy. And so, okay, wait a minute. So the coach got to say, hold on now. We got to come up with one.
Yeah.
We can't have this division. And that's why moving the draft into late April gives you time to sort out the differences. Because years ago when the draft, like growing up for me, it was in January, early February. Okay, so you come off of the All-Star games and bang, the draft's there.
Right.
So the GM, he had control of everything.
Yeah.
Other than if you were Lombardi, at that time, everybody else, it was the GM who had control of those drafts.
Right.
It got pushed back. And now you see coaches and assistant coaches having a bigger say.
Right.
And there's good in that and bad in that. I've talked to enough coaches about it where, okay, that scout saw something, but he's not looking through it through my eyes as a coach.
Right.
Okay. And the scout will say, well, I can only see what I see.
Right.
Okay. I'm not coaching him. I'm just evaluating him.
Yeah.
So there's that two-way street, and somebody has to say, okay, the buck stops here. I got to make that decision.
Right.
Now, I think Mickey and Sean worked well, and we all know because people in the Saints organization have told us, like at the end of January, when all this is done, the scouts hand Mickey and Sean all the evaluations and all the scouting reports and their board.
Right.
Mickey and Sean go in and they look at it not up and down, but this way, the east-west.
Right.
Of what's the biggest need? Does he fit with us? That sort of thing. So they're taking the original board and reshuffling it.
Right.
No matter how you cut it, it's reshuffling that board all the way down from top to bottom. So yeah, it's and everybody does it a little bit different. But we see now more and more coaches getting involved because their thing is, man, listen, if you're paying me this kind of money, is that old Parcells line, hey, if you want me to cook the dinner, you got to go let me shop for some groceries every now and then.
Good point. Good point. Yeah. I mean, look, every coach, I feel like this, okay? So we all know this is not like classic NFL. Guys would lose year after year and still keep a job, right? I mean, you're not going to be there very long if you're not, having success. So these coaches feel, well, look, if I'm on borrowed time and if I'm going to go down, I'm going down my way. I want to do it my way. I want my players and my scheme that I feel would be best to help me get this organization where it needs to be. I can't blame them for that. I really can't. Not at all. You got.
I had Jim Finks tell me this. He said, when I was with the Vikings, Bud Grant never came to me and said, I want that player.
All right.
He was like, Jim, who are we going to get? He's like, Bud would say, Jim, who are we going to draft?
Right.
And he said he might give me a position. Look, I think maybe we need some help at linebacker, or maybe we need another offensive lineman, or we need a speed receiver. But he said he would never press me about player.
Right.
He might press me on a position, but he wouldn't press me on a player. And he said, so I did the pick. Right. Hank Stram worked with us at WWL once Ditka got the head coaching job.
Right.
And Hank, he had a lot of say on who they picked in Kansas City and in New Orleans. And Hank's deal was Lamar let me do that in Kansas City. And he said, but then I had to answer to Lamar.
Right. And
he said, with the Saints, I just had a short run. But he said, basically, it was me. I was making those picks.
Right.
I would take the evaluation. I would look at them. But Hank felt he had so many different connections that if he liked a player, give him a call to the head coach or whatever, and that guy would give him the straight scoop on it. And sometimes that's not the case.
Yeah.
But he had told me in those years of the 60s, early 70s with Kansas City, he had the chalk in his hand. He was making the decision. But he said, I did have a boss. And Lamar would tell me, are you sure?
Yeah.
And he said, every time I made a pick, he wasn't sure about, I would hear it. Are you sure? Are you sure? And he was like, yeah. He said, yeah, Lamar, I'm absolutely sure on it. But he said, I really wasn't, but I would tell him that. He said, come on, he's, but one of the richest men in the world at that point, Lamar Hunt. So everybody does it a little bit different, but you're right. Coaches now, they got it hung out there. And so they have tremendous say. But every draft is different. And you see in this year's draft, it is a big man draft where half the first round is going to be offensive, defensive linemen, linebackers.
Yeah.
Hit. And you will have some receivers, 4 to 5, probably 5, going round 1, and a couple of quarterbacks, no running back, no tight end. You will have some defensive backs because you got to cover those guys out on the edge. You got to find a way to match up. And now I've always felt the biggest risers on draft day were big men.
Yeah.
Because there are just so many that are out there.
Yeah.
The other position that I think makes a run every year is, and because of how they use them, is safeties.
Yeah.
And man, Greg Williams, he would always tell me, "Hey, Bayou, let me explain to you about safeties. They want you to cover like a corner, they want you to tackle like a linebacker, and they want you to rush off the edge like a defensive end."
All right.
And so I got to find a special guy that can do that. There ain't a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
So when you're going to see guys, Lewis Seen is one of them from Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And I had him right at the end of round 1, early part of round 2. Don't be surprised he gets picked in round 1.
Yeah.
Because of the fact he can do that. You know, he plays the run like a linebacker. He covers like a cover corner. And when Georgia didn't really have to blitz him much, but when they asked him to, he could.
Yeah.
So
they're pretty good at it.
Safeties. And man, if he was a little bit bigger, I think Jalen Petrie from Baylor would be that type of player.
Yeah.
Jalen's not real big. He's 5'11".
Mm-hmm.
But man, they put him up on the line of scrimmage almost like an extra linebacker most times.
Yeah.
And Aranda, he raved about Petrie as a run defender, but he said, man, he's also really good. He started out as a nickel corner.
Right.
So, you know, he can cover. And May, who they just picked up from the Jets, we had him on. And I remember when he was being recruited, it was LSU, Alabama, Florida.
Right.
And the first thing I heard from the LSU guy was, we're going to put him as a nickel cornerback.
Right.
And he ends up playing safety. So you can see the versatility here. All this stuff about, well, he plays high safety, does this, that. Man, it's all hybrid today. Every play is a little bit different.
That's true.
And so you can't, unless that guy can't cover, then that's a different story. But now you're looking for versatility. So that's why Hill from Michigan, a Jalen Petrie from Baylor, a Lewis Seen, they're going to get their stock elevated because they can do all that other stuff. They can play the nickel. They can play against the run. They can blitz off the edge. And it's a rare trait. Not everybody can do it.
Yeah. I mean, look, I definitely feel you. Like, you look at somebody like, even with CJ Gardner-Johnson. I mean, he was a safety at Florida. Now he's, you know, a nickel. You know, I mean, and he's all over the field. I mean, sometimes you'll see him out there playing safety, playing nickel, blitzing. You know, like, man, he does it all. And I think even like somebody like Buda Baker, like guys like, you know, these guys are like all over the field.
Okay, I mean, the first one in like recent times we saw do it was Honey Badger.
Yep.
Okay, you look at how they used him at LSU and how they've used him in Arizona or Kansas City.
Yep.
You know, Honey Badger was the first guy. It was almost like the queen piece in chess. Okay, I can move him here. I can move him there. You know, and you can see the value of that type player, especially when you're getting him at 21, 22 years old. That's the other part. Now, again, with Honey Badger, as you know, as he's getting older and he's had some injuries, he may not be the same player. He still brings you a lot of experience. He understands this game at a certain level. You're not going to get him any bigger, okay? Yeah, because I hear that a lot about, Jalen Petrie. They can put 15, 20 pounds on him. What? Man, come on. You ain't putting no 15, 20 pounds on Jalen Petrie.
Right.
In essence, he's built like he's built. You might be able to put 5, 6 pounds on him, but you're not really putting a lot of weight on him. You don't want to slow him down. I don't want to take his strength because I want to fix a measurement. Right. Okay. It's not Derry Rosenthal. Okay. So we were talking about this last night with Derry. It's an interesting thing with Derry. He was in the 340s at LSU. And he had issues. He was getting suspended all the time. So he goes to Kentucky. His first weigh-in was 319. He goes to the combine. He's in the 290s. Okay, so my thing is on a 6'6.5" player. Now, if I get him, and he is a little bit of a project because he really always wanted to play defensive line. That was part of it too. Right. But I've seen enough about him as a project player, as a later round pick. Can put a little bit of weight on him
Right.
But man, at 290 pounds, that's what I would have wanted to see him at LSU.
Right.
You know, not 340 pounds.
Right.
Because I do think that 40, 50 pounds more. And sometimes guys think they got to get bigger to play in the NFL. No,
Right.
you're taking away the strength of you, a rare athlete that can move well, and you putting extra weight on. No, you know, that don't work.
Yeah,
That doesn't work.
Yeah, it definitely does not work. You know, I mean, you know, it takes away that speed, that explosiveness, and some, you know, some things that actually make you appealing.
And because I want that big lineman to be able to bend at the knees and be able to shuffle you and steer you to the outside in pass protection.
Yep.
If I'm a 300-pound or 310-pound lineman, I still have that bend and steer. When I'm getting into the 340s, then my ability I'm going to bend at the waist, not at the knees.
Right.
And so it affects my steering, my leverage, my ability to kind of force you to the edge. Now, I'm a really good run blocker because I can get into your body and move you around.
Right.
But, you know, this game is so much about technique, too.
Yeah.
That a lot of times I see more and more at the college level. I wonder who's teaching them what they're teaching them.
Right.
Because sometimes they're not technically really sound, and yet you see some guys really technically sound. I do think one addition of the Saints offseason that will help is Doug Marrone. No matter what you might think about him as a head coach, as an offensive line coach, he gets it. He understands it. He's technically sound with these players. He plays to their strength. And I think he is going to be a really good addition to this coaching staff, especially in trying to develop a younger player. The guy I think is the guy watch to see would be Ruiz.
Yeah.
Because, man, he didn't look technically sound.
Terrible.
He didn't look it at all. He seemed out of position, didn't know which guy to block at times.
Yep.
And so his indecision and his play affected Eric McCoy.
Right.
Because Eric's trying to help him. You know, Eric's trying to help him out, bail him out.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see the situation with Ruiz, who really was the only cat that played every game last year.
Yeah.
Along the offensive line.
Yeah.
His addition now and bringing in Marrone, because I think Doug's a really, really good offensive line coach.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he, like some guys, they're better coordinators than coaches. I mean, he had success. I mean, Jacksonville was in the AFC Championship game. I mean, and also
it's close.
Yeah, they were
one batted pass.
Yeah,
one batted pass, and they did it with Blake Bortles. I'm talking about Blake Bortles.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give him credit for that, But I think him coming over, hopefully, it helped the offensive line, the team, the offense as a whole. And no matter what the Saints decide to do in the draft, hopefully they bring in some quality players that can add to the successful seasons they've had and get back to being that playoff team. But Mike, thank you so much for your time. You were so gracious with your time. Thank you for telling us, the stories and also just getting us prepared for the NFL draft. Really do appreciate it and look forward to talking to you next time.
All right, that'll be great, and we can talk more about the draft next time we meet.
Yeah. Let everybody know how they can get in touch with you. Of course, we know that you're on WWL with the Cajun Cannon, but how can everyone get in touch with you?
They can follow up on WWL.com. I'm not doing my draft book this year, 36 years. I made the decision last spring that would be the last one. I had other opportunities to do certain things. And man, it's not so much doing the book, but it's piecing it together.
Right.
Getting it ready for printing and then mailing out that I said, that's it. But we'll have a lot of that information on WWL.com, also on MikeDetillier.com, on Twitter, and also on my Facebook site. So we'll have all that information. Matter of fact, my top player rating a couple weeks ago is still on there. So you can go to my Facebook site, also on my Twitter site, and find it there. Also on Odyssey and WWL site, and on saintsreport.com.
Yeah, looking forward to hearing what you have to say about some of these top picks and what the Saints need to do going forward. Mike, thank you so much for your time, and we really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much.